And welcome everyone to Learn a Trade channel. I am Kevin Tate, and today's broadcast is called Cornelius Multi-Flavor Valve, or MFV. And this is a training provided through Marmon, who is a Cornelius manufacturer. This particular video is taking place on a IDC Pro system. So I hope you enjoy the video and let me know in comments how you like it. And before I get started, I'd like to thank all of the viewers, all of the channel members, and the website members. Thank you for your support. I appreciate you all. Enjoy the video, everyone.
Hello, my name is Bert with Marmon, part of Marmon Food Service Technologies. In this IDC Pro training module, I'm going to talk about the multi-flavor valves, which you'll see referred to as MFV. First of all, the flow controls for the MFV valves. As you can see here in this picture, there's black flow control housings, there are white flow control housings, and there are purple flow control housings, and on both sides, both left and right. The black flow control housings, those are for the brands, and there's 10 per side. And the white flow control housings, that's for the plain water and the carb water. And then the purple ones, that's for the flavors, the vanilla, cherry, lemon, and lime and such. The reason there are four on each side for the water is to get the high water flow for dispensing that the IDC Pro is capable of. Two flow controls are energized at the same time for carb water, and then also two flow controls are energized at the same time for plain water. Another thing to reference, this picture here is the front view as you'd be seeing it standing in front of the unit. What you'll find referred to in the rest of this training module is that there are the bottom or front flow controls, and then there's the top or rear flow controls. And the reason I say rear and front is these front ones, the flow controls themselves stick out a little bit closer to you versus the top row, which are recessed back in a little bit. The valve block layout itself, the back block. Now in this picture here, this is a picture of all of the back blocks for an IDC Pro, but they aren't physically attached to the bulkhead of the unit so that you can see the rear view of these back blocks. And the reason for this picture here is I want to show you about each one of the spindles. Every one of these is an individual spindle for each one of the solenoids that you saw in the previous picture. Now, the spindles in the back blocks, they're shutoffs that are used for service. You can push the spindle up to stop the flow, and then you push it down to allow the flow. And so what that is the product is shut off when you see the black tab, this black tab on top here. If you see that protruding up, that means that the product has been shut off to that solenoid. If you look at this from the front and you see the white part of the spindle protruding downward, then that means that the product is flowing through that spindle assembly. Here's an individual solenoid assembly, just to do some more identification of the part. The rear solenoid, as you can see, like I mentioned prior, is that the top rear is slightly recessed versus the bottom front. So just to show the difference here between the top and the bottom, rear, front for describing purposes. One thing to note on this picture here is that the stickers, every solenoid has a sticker on it. The solenoid stickers for the top flow control are on the left side. So as you were looking at the unit from this direction, looking forward toward it, this solenoid right here, you'll notice that the stickers on the left-hand side, that's for the top flow control up here. And the bottom or the front solenoid, that sticker would be on the right-hand side or the other side of this picture. Flow control removals. So you want to repair or replace one of the flow controls, and that can be done without removing the valve itself. You don't have to remove that whole valve bank from the back block. What you do is you push the spindle up from the bottom so that this protruding, you see the spindle here is protruding up, and that shuts off the flow. And then what you want to do is you want to activate this solenoid, these solenoids here for that spindle. You want to activate that to depressurize the product that's still captured inside of here, inside of the flow control housing that's still under pressure. So, go to the touch screen, activate that solenoid just for a moment, and it'll depressurize that. Then to continue servicing it, right here, there's a plate. That's a retainer plate, and it's got two screws on it right there. Take those two screws out, that retainer plate comes out. Then this flow adjusting screw comes out. The piston and sleeve and spring are inside, and those would all come out. And remember, the spindle is pushed up, so that's keeping any product from flowing out. So you can do the service there. Now, just as a side note here, is that some accounts use a high yield syrup in the unit, and that's fine. That can be done. But from the factory, these are standard flow controls. And if you're going to be using high yield syrups in the IDC Pro, you're going to need to, in the initial install, open this up and replace out the piston that's inside of there for the high yield syrups. And then don't forget to close the spindle and purge between the valve and the back block before we move on. I want to stress that one more time. Make sure you purge this before you move into servicing. The shutoffs themselves, you must, and I want to reiterate on this, is you must push up all three spindles, and you'll see all three spindles are up, and then the dovetail. You can see the dovetails here. Okay, so with all three spindles up, you go from the bottom side here, like this person with their hand, they're pushing up. You can see how all three of these dovetails have been pushed up. And when those dovetails are pushed up, this whole bank of solenoids can then be disengaged from the back block assembly because all three of the spindles are up to shut off the flow of product. The dovetails have been pushed up to disengage the locking of this bank of valves. Now, to disassemble an individual solenoid like this, that's held in there with a metal clip. And all you have to do is take a screwdriver and you want to pry this clip on out of there. It's got a locking clip and you can remove it. Once you get it pried out with a screwdriver, then the remaining you can slide it out with your hands. One thing to take note here is the wire harnesses location for the solenoids. You're unplugging up to 6 per that module, that all 6 of those. So just take note of the harnessing and where everything is plugged in. Removing the valve module from the unit. Once you've taken the clip out, well, after the clip is out, what you want to do is you want to put your thumb on the lower solenoid and you want to lift that out. You want to swing that out. You see how you can just swing it and pivot it out and it'll come out. Now, thing to take note is there's some O-rings in there. There's some red O-rings and there's some quad rings. I'll show you a picture of here shortly, that you don't want to lose those. They have a tendency that they may fall off. They may stay with the back block and that. So just make sure that those O-rings stay with the solenoid assembly. Removing the solenoid coil, plunger, and spring. Now that you got the valve removed from the bank, rotate the solenoid counterclockwise. You can see here, you rotate this counterclockwise to remove, and then you can service the solenoid, the plunger that's in there, and the spring. Bit of caution here is that spring is very small and you don't want to lose it. Once you drop a spring, it can bounce any direction, as most people know, and it can be fragile. Don't take the spring and try to squeeze it in, pull it apart to try to tighten it up or anything like that. If you suspect the spring is bad, replace it. Don't try to modify it or bend it. And then once again, note the wire routing before reinstalling the coil and the valve. The solenoid coil itself. Now, all the coils are the same, both left and right, brand, flavor, waters. All the solenoids are the same, and they can be ohmed out at 9.1 ohms plus or minus 10% for a spec if you wanted to do some troubleshooting on that coil. The initial voltage being sent to that coil. Now, these are the MFV boards and those power supplies talked about in other training modules. 30 volts DC is sent to initially energize and open up the plunger and pull it in. Once that happens, that voltage drops down then lower because it doesn't take as much voltage to maintain and keep the plunger open. Now, after you've serviced the valve and you want to put it back together, there is a trick to it, I might say, and that starts with you want to put the solenoid, and you'll see the flange here. You see this rear flange, and notice the quad ring in there. I'll talk about that in a moment. But this flange, and then there's this inside wall of the carrier bracket or the bank. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to put that in at a 45-degree angle, and you want that flange to sit on the underside or the back side of that wall there, that little retainer. Here again, here's the two O-rings in there, and you want to lubricate this when you put it back together. And we recommend Molykote 111 as a recommended lubricant. Don't try to use any other type of lubricants that are that maybe be petroleum-based products or anything like that. That would impart off a bad taste. So we recommend just Molykote, which is a food-grade lubricant. Now, the black quad rings, they're kind of a unique O-ring or a quad ring, I should call it, and that they're four-sided. And there's a rib that goes all the way around it on the one side so that it seals better. So these are kind of unique special O-rings. Don't replace them with some other black round standard O-ring. You want to use the quad ring in here with the Molykote on it. And then also when you're putting this back, there's a couple of red O-rings that are also lubricated. And here again, keep track of these O-rings when you're disassembling and reassembling. Make sure that they're in place, that they haven't fallen out or in a position where they could get pinched. Reinstalling the valve. Once you get that flange in there and you set the valve assembly back down in place, you're going to want to put that retaining clip back in. And now take note here when you're looking at this, is that retaining clip is sliding underneath these two lips, the lip there and the lip there. This clip goes underneath and pushes all the way in until it bottoms and stop. If you were to push that clip in and it was sitting up on top of these two little flanges here, those two little plastic lips, it would not lock it in. It has to go underneath in order to retain it. And if you don't do that, you will get a leak when you push that spindle back down again. Now, to put this all back in, put the whole bank back in together, remember that the spindles were pushed up, the spindles were all up, and the dovetails were up. So then you want to place that valve bank, and it's all lubricated. So you're going to set it in there until all of the ports and that line up. And then once it's pushed in and flush, then you're going to want to push down on the black dovetail. These black dovetails, you're going to, where the thumb is there, you're going to push that down until it snaps and locks in place. And then you're going to push each one of the spindles down and then reconnect the wiring harnesses and then test for leaks. I thank you for watching this video.